Okay, we are live. Let me share the screen. Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the Yoga Sutra session. So we will start with the prayer.
Yogena chittasya padena vacham malam sharirasya cha vaidyakena yopakarot tam pravaram muninam patanjalim Pranjaliranatosmi.
Okay, good morning, good evening. Welcome back to another session of our Patanjali Yoga Sutra class. So this is the 13th session. Last week, in fact, 2 weeks back, we covered up to verse 123, the first chapter, 23rd verse. So as always, let's do a quick recap in 3-4 minutes and try to see the next 3 verses, next 3 sutras. So let's quickly see. So this is the structure of the Samadhi Pada. We covered up to verse 23. The whole idea of the Samadhi Pada is to give us an extensive understanding of what is Samadhi, because Samadhi is one of the goals of the yoga. Samadhi has different dimensions, and first and foremost definition is it is the meditative absorption of a chosen object, right? We talked about that. Because if you rewind a little bit, the goal of the yoga is to gain complete control over my mind. That is the first goal of the yoga. In my current state, all of you can just sit and think for a minute. I don't have much control over my mind. If I had control, I always choose to be happy. I always choose to be positive. I always choose to be inspired. I always choose to be motivated. This is what I want. And practically what happens is just opposite. So I do have a tool, but I do not have control over that tool. I have a car which can take me to different places, but I don't know how to drive it properly. When I don't know how to drive my equipment or the tool, instead of reaching the destination, I typically encounter in an accident. So like that, when I do have control over my mind, the mind becomes my best friend. But when I do not have control over my mind, the very same mind which I can use for achieving greater things in my life became the cause for my fall down. So that's why the first goal of yoga is to know this fact and gain control over the mind. So Patanjali started the Yoga Sutra by making the statement of intent very clear. I am going to teach this yoga, which is a samadhi, like controlling over the mind, to those people who are committed, who are ready to start. And I'm going to teach this, not something new. I'm teaching this which is there in the original Vedas. So that's how the statement of intent started. Then in the second sutra itself, he just defines the yoga. The yoga is defined as chitta vritti nirodha, ability to control over my mental activities. Every mental activities, I do have control. And this is what is yoga. And Patanjali tells, when you have complete control over the mental activities, you will be able to differentiate clearly between the mental activities and you. Typically, what happens is I always get identified with my mental activities, and I think that I'm carried away with that. So when I do have control over my mental activities, I can see myself properly. So tada drashtuhu surupe avasthanam. Otherwise, what is going to happen? Vritti sarupya mitaratra. I get carried away by vrittis, mental activities. So if that is the goal, how do I gain control over my mental activities? If chitta vritti nirodha is the goal of the yoga, what are all the vrittis I need to gain control over? That is why on verse 5 to 11, he defines properly the 5 types of mental modification. We had an extensive discussion on that. They are pramana, the vrittis that gives you the right kind of knowledge. Then viparyaya, the vrittis that gives you wrong type of knowledge. Vikalpa, it's only the imagination. Then what? Smriti, memories of the past. And then finally, the sleep. Sleep is also considered as a special kind of vritti, which is a tamasic vritti that covers the mind. When the mind is completely covered, I feel I slept. So these are the 5 vrittis. And then we saw how do I gain control over these mental activities. 2 techniques were given. One is called abhyasa. Abhyasa means consistent practice. Every day, I sit in the seat of meditation. I do this 8-step yoga, Ashtanga yoga, consistently. Yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, dharana, dhyana, samadhi. These 8 steps I continuously practice. Dirghakarya, nairandarika, satkara sevita dridhabhomi. For a sufficient period of time, consistently, with faith, when I practice, I gain control over my mental activity. This is called abhyasa. Then vairagya means what? You need to have certain discipline, right? So in your eating, you need to have some discipline. In your thinking, you need to have some discipline. In your routine, you need to have some discipline. So the ability to put that discipline is also vairagya. Vashikara vairagya. We talked about that, right? Not means not getting blindly addicted to anything. That is vairagya. So abhyasa and vairagya combined, you get into the state of samadhi. And the samadhi on a high level is divided into 2 categories. One is called samprajnada samadhi and the other one is called asamprajnada samadhi. The samprajnada samadhi is a samadhi means my mind is completely absorbed on something, but I need an object of meditation. So when I am in the seat of meditation, when I'm thinking about my breathing, I am peaceful, I'm contented. But the moment I take my thinking out of my breath, all the problems comes over. So the gaining of the mental control over the mental activity is pretty much what is going to means it is during the time of my meditation. That is what is samprajnada samadhi. And the samprajnada samadhi is again categorized into 4. Savitarka, savichara, sananda, sa asmita. These are the different types of meditative techniques we need to learn, which we are going to see a little bit later. So then once it is done, the asamprajnada samadhi, you need to go. Asamprajnada samadhi means you don't need an object of meditation. Without anything, you are able to control your mental activities completely. Irrespective of whatever is the external input, you are able to control. And that is the highest type of samadhi. Asamprajnada samadhi. Samprajna means with knowledge of something else. Asamprajna means you're not dependent upon anything. You are in that state of samadhi. That is asamprajnada samadhi. And then what happens? We talked about the type of commitments we need to have, right? So if you practice regularly, you are going to get it. There are 2 types of practices. Some people, when they practice, but they cannot reach that final state of samadhi, Patanjali tells, such people, when they come back in their next life, they can pick up from where they left. Other people, what happens? They have to start through the samprajna, the samadhi. Now, the samadhi, getting into the state of samadhi is very important. But is there any way I can accelerate this process? So that's where Patanjali said, yes, your effort, your abhyasa, and your vairagya is critical, but there is a catalyst. There is something you can use to accelerate this process, accelerate the absorption into the state of samadhi. And that is Ishwara Pranidhana. If you surrender, if you live in accordance, if you recognize Ishwara, that is going to accelerate. Pranidhana, nidhana means surrender. Praharshena nidhana. If you surrender means if you live in accordance with the dharma, if you live in accordance with Ishwara's laws, definitely that is going to accelerate. So last week, what we did was we paused a little bit and we tried to understand what is Ishwara. So we are going to pick up that thread and we are going to continue that discussion. Any obvious questions? Otherwise, we can continue and we can talk about this Ishwara Pranidhana a little bit more in detail. Any obvious questions so far about what I covered so far? Okay, seems we are good. So we will continue. So let's see verse 24. So let's listen.
Klesha-karma vipakashayairamrishta purusha vishesha Ishwaraha.
Brilliant definition. He tells klesha, karma, vishayakasha, paramrishta, purusha vishesha, Ishwaraha. So we need to understand who is Ishwara. Because we made a statement of fact. What was that statement of fact? By surrendering to Ishwara, you can accelerate this process. But who is that Ishwara I am surrendering to, right? We have to understand that a little bit clearly. Who is this Ishwara we are surrendering to? See, one of the major difference between Vedic tradition and the other tradition is Ishwara is a common factor in almost every tradition. But Vedic tradition tells me more than blindly believing in Ishwara, you need to understand Ishwara. So that's why the characteristics of Ishwara is explained. So we need to understand what is Ishwara. So let's take a pause and try to understand. I'll try my best, but if you have any questions, let's take that at the end in our Q&A. So let's try to see. So last week, we started the discussion by understanding who is Ishwara. Let's make it a little bit interactive. What exactly your understanding of Ishwara from our last week's discussion? And we are going to continue that thread. We all talk about Ishwara. We all call Ishwara. Whenever there is a problem, we call Ishwara. And this is a word, God or Ishwara is a term we use almost every day. So what is that Ishwara? Anybody?
We were saying that universal intelligence was Ishwara, right? Like a reference to Gita too.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thought? Thanks, Radhika. So let's spend another 5-10 minutes, try to understand who is Ishwara. And it's my request, please try to contemplate upon this. This is much larger than we think. Right from our birth, the moment I gain means remembering, everybody is talking about God. What is that God you're talking? In my initial days of my childhood, I thought, or I was told that just like your father or mother, who is your father and mother? The one who protects me. If I need anything, I go and ask my father and mother. They provide me everything. But Ishwara is presented as something like much powerful than my father and mother, who can grant me anything and everything. So I started the faith in Ishwara as a convenient means for removing my obstacles, and also as a convenience means for acquiring and possessing what I want. For example, I pray to God, oh God, I need to get good marks. Or, oh God, I need to get that toy. That's all fine. But now, fast forward. When you are sitting here in 2021 as adults, what is our understanding of Ishwara? Or what is majority's understanding of Ishwara? It's pretty much that childhood, immature understanding of Ishwara. For me, Ishwara is another means. Just like I put some money in the stock as a protection at the end, Ishwara is a means of solving my day-to-day problem. I go to temple or church or mosque as a means or as a process to mitigate the risk in my life. My God is, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be contented. I wanted to gain money. My child need to go to an Ivy League, or my child need to get a job, or I should be disease-free. I have so many desires. And Ishwara is a means of fulfilling that. Again, there is nothing wrong in that. But beyond that, there is a larger dimension of Ishwara. We need to get away from this childish understanding of Ishwara to a larger understanding of Ishwara. Then only you can relate to Ishwara on a day-by-day basis. First of all, you need to understand and convince who is Ishwara. As I explained earlier, right? So when you think about this universe, when you look at this universe, you cannot miss Ishwara. Last week, we talked about our body. Any phenomenon in this universe, if you take, you can see that it is perfectly designed. The 15th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita brilliantly calls this out. Right? Think about your human brain. Imagine the food you eat. See, if you eat one donut, that is good enough to function your brain one day. Even the best machine in the whole world cannot function with that much energy. And look at the design of your system. Any system for that matter you take, if you go deep into that, oh my God. Look at your blood itself. Oh my God. See, you have these three components. You have this white cell, you have this red cell, and you have this platelets or the plasma. How beautifully it is designed. You know how the heart is pumping 24/7. The blood means take the food to every cell of your body. And how the heart regulates your pumping. When you stand up, certain organs need more blood. So the whole system adjusts like that. And this blood cell, oh my God, it's so amazing. The function is carry oxygen into the actual cells. And how it functions. Every day, around 150 billion new blood cells are formed. And in certain number of days, they just die by themselves. And of course, they do not need the oxygen to circulate the blood. They use glucose. So it's perfectly designed. And once these blood cells are actually dead, you can see that they were flushed out properly. And that is why your stool has this brown color. So you can see that every everything in your body is perfectly designed. And there is a scientist who tells, if you take all the best brains of the past and future and the present and ask them to make something even closer to the human body, it's just impossible. So you can see, if you want to design such a complex system, you can see that how much intelligence has gone into that. It's perfectly designed. It cannot be otherwise. This is true for your physiological system. This is true for your physical system. You look at the laws of planetary motion. We always say that Kepler determined it or the Newton determined it. They just discovered it. Somebody else has made it. Everywhere, how the human mind functions, how your body functions, everything, how the universal phenomenon functions, you can see that there is a perfect order in the entire universe. And that's why it's a universe and not a chaos. So this intelligent order that make the universe came into being, that makes the universe existing, and that is running the universe. That is what is Ishwara. You cannot miss Ishwara. Every day when you breathe, you can feel that Ishwara's presence there. When you eat the food, how it get digested, you can see Ishwara's presence there. This intelligent order of the universe is what is called Ishwara. Right? It's everywhere. It functions 24/7. So understanding this cosmic order in which I am also a part and aligning with that cosmic order is what is called as Ishwara Pranidhana. And in this verse, Patanjali gives a little bit more clarity into that concept. He tells, typically a human being is conditioned by a few things. He talks about a few things. What is that? He tells like the human beings are conditioned by klesha, karma, then vipaka, and samskaras. But Ishwara is not bound by any of these. So that's what this sutra means. Ishwara is a special Purusha. Every living being has consciousness. Purusha is there. But Ishwara is very special. Because if you take me, I am conditioned by so many things. I got my birth because of karma. Right? I'm subjected to klesha. I'm subjected to the results of my karma. And I'm subjected to the karma for my next birth. But Ishwara is unconditioned or free from all these troubles a human being goes through. So Ishwara is different from even an enlightened person, because an enlightened person, when he was born, he was bound by all these constraints. But Ishwara is ever free. He is not constrained by anything. This is what the Bhagavad Gita tells, and that idea is re-emphasized here. So let's go to understand a little bit meaning, a little bit proper, and then we will come back and go verse by verse. So he tells, Ishwara is a Purusha. Of course, Ishwara is a Purusha, but it's very special compared to every normal jiva or normal individual, because a normal individual was under bondage for a certain period of time till he get enlightenment. But Ishwara was ever bound. So then he brilliantly describes 4 topics which binds a human being. Let's try to understand that a little bit later in detail. One is called klesha. Klesha means the obstacles. So every individual, each one of us has these 5 kleshas. The first one is called ignorance. Ignorance means avidya. Avidya means what? Here, ignorance refers to my understanding about myself. When I sit and think about myself, I think I am the body and the mind. That is what is called avidya. But in fact, I have body and mind. My true identity is Purusha or Atma. So when I have this avidya, what is going to happen? Ego, the individuality is going to come. I think I am this body and mind. I think, suppose I have a problem with my body, it is my problem. Suppose I have a problem with my mind, it is my problem. Of course, it is my body's problem. So my false identity with my body and the mind is asmita. So the avidya, which leads to the asmita. And when I am identified with my body and mind, I will have binding desires and binding aversions, which is known as raga dvesha. So avidya, which creates confusion in me, who is my real identity, what is my real identity, it causes avidya, causes asmita, and it causes raga dvesha. And then because of this raga dvesha, I am pretty much afraid of death, because I think that when I die, I am going to come to an end. Because if I had my identity with Purusha, I would not have that fear of death. And then this is called as apinivesha, a binding, extreme desire, a fear of death and extreme desire to live. This is apinivesha. And these these are the causes of all the human struggles, according to Yoga Sutra. So every human being, every jiva is subjected to these 5 obstacles: avidya, asmita, ragadvesha, apinivesha. And because of this, what is going to happen? I will be prompted certain actions. Because of this asmita, I think that, okay, he insulted me, so I need to teach him a lesson. So all the karmas, all the actions I do, usually they are prompted by the ego or the egocentric desires. So that is also a characteristic of the jiva. And then what is going to happen? The results I get, okay, I invested money in stock, I didn't get what I got, means expected. That results, it's called vipaka. I'm very much attached to the results of the action, and that results of the action is known as vipaka. And finally, what is going to happen? There is something called ashaya. Ashaya means it is called sanchita karma. So whenever I do a karma, what happens? That there is an impression will be created because of that karma, and that will be stored in a pool of karma. Ashaya, the literal meaning of ashaya means storehouse. For example, you might have heard something called jalashaya, right? Jalashaya means it is the pool of jala, or a water means water storage. That is what is jalashaya. So karmashaya means it is a pool which I store all the karma. So whatever I do, there will be an impression stored in this ashaya. So all these are characteristics of a human being. And Patanjali here tells that the difference between the Ishwara and the human being is Ishwara is not subjected to any of these problems. Ishwara do not have klesha, because Ishwara do not have avidya. Ishwara do not have asmita, the ego that I am the body and the mind. Ishwara do not have binding desires. Krishna tells, right? Everything is in me, but I am not in them. That is what it is, raga dvesha. And Ishwara do not have apinivesha. And Ishwara is not bound by karma. Ishwara is not expecting a results of action, vipaka. And as a result, Ishwara do not have any sanchita karma or karmashaya. So that's why Patanjali differentiate who is Ishwara from a normal human being by stating these factors. So let's listen the words once again and try to understand the meaning once. Let's restate the meaning.
क्लेशकर्म विपाकाशयैरपरामृष्टः पुरुषविशेष ईश्वरः.
So Ishwara is a special Purusha, right? Vishesha Purusha, a special Purusha. How? Aparamrishta, he is untouched by what? A few things are designed, right? One is klesha. Klesha means the 5-fold items we talked earlier. Avidya, means asmita, ragadvesha, and ashaya. So this is not touched by klesha. And then karma. He is not bound by karma, and he is not bound by samskaras. So that's Ishwara. So understanding of this Ishwara is important, and this verse gives a little bit more insight. Any questions? Obvious questions? Otherwise, we can continue and come back later.
Question, but I'll keep it for the end, Rajesh.
Okay, sure, Gina. Anybody else? Any obvious question before we go?
Just one observation, Rajesh. Just
Sure.
you said 4, 5, but there are raga and dvesha. They are you consider as 2 things. That's why it is 5. Because
Yes.
when you
So see, these are the see, these are the 5, right? Ignorance, avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha.
Oh, okay.
So that is klesha. The 4 is the conditions, right? The 4 conditions are: 1 is klesha, second one is karma, third one is vipaka, 4 is ashaya. So within klesha itself, there are 5 items: avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's go to Ishwara again.
तत्र निरतिशयं सर्वज्ञबीजम्.
So continuing the attempt to make Ishwara understandable rather than blindly believing it. That is the goal of these verses or sutra. So Ishwara's characteristics is more elaborated. So he tells Tatra. Tatra means in him. In whom? Ishwara. When I say in him, please don't think that he is a male. Ishwara is a neutral gender. So, but we have to use some words, right? That's why I'm constrained to use him or her. Then what? Bijam. Bijam means Niratishayam Sarvajna Bijam. The Bijam of omniscience is unsurpassed. Niratishayam. His knowledge is complete. He is Sarvajna. Who is Ishwara? He is all-knowing, because look at the universe. You can see knowledge is programmed in every bit of the universe. Who has this complete knowledge? That entity which possesses this complete knowledge of the secret of the universe. Everything, every law, every order. So Patanjali tells the seed of omniscience is uncomparable, or to the highest. It cannot be exceeded. Maximum in Ishwara. So the person or the entity that has the complete knowledge about everything is Ishwara. This is a brilliant definition. So in our literature, Ishwara is referred as Bhagavan. Bhagavan. We always call that, right? Bhagavan, Bhagavan. Anybody remembering the meaning of the word Bhagavan? So whom do we call it as a Panavan? See, the word Van means the one who possesses.
Yeah.
Dhanavan means the one who possesses wealth. Dhanam. Bhagyavan means the one who possesses luck. So who is Bhagavan from that perspective?
The 6 qualities.
Exactly. The one who possesses Bhaga is known as Bhagavan. Now the question is, what is Bhaga? Bhaga is a word in Sanskrit which tells 6-fold qualities in absolute order. 6-fold qualities in an absolute order. So the first one is Aishwaryam. Aishwaryam means overlordship or control. Yeah, I do have control over my hands, right? When I want, I can lift it. When I want, I can keep it down. I do have some control over my phone. I do have some control over my car. So I also have some Aishwaryam. but it is pretty much limited. It is pretty much limited by the time, space, and also based on my skills. So if there is something, some being who has absolute control of everything in the universe, that is Bhagavan. So Aishwaryam. Then what? Jnanam. Knowledge. I also have some knowledge. I also have some knowledge about calculus. I also have some knowledge about computer science. I also have some knowledge about Python. I have some basic knowledge about physics. But my knowledge is pretty much limited. So if there is a being who has this complete knowledge of everything, that being is known as Bhagavan. Right? Then Vairagyam, Viragasya Bhava. Yeah, I do have Vairagyam. I do not have binding attachments on so many things. But there are so many other things where I'm completely bound. So if somebody is there in the universe who possesses everything, but who do not have any binding attachment to anything, that is Bhagavan. Then Viryam. Viryam means what? I also have some Viryam, ability to execute, ability to move forward, that energy, that strength. But my Viryam is pretty much limited. So if there is a being who has this potential of this Viryam in the fullest strength amount, that is Ishwara. Yashas. Yashas is what? Fame. I have some fame. Of course, I'm known to my family. I'm known to a few people here and there. But my fame is pretty much limited. But he whose fame is there for everywhere in the universe, that is Ishwara. The last one is Sri. Wealth. Yes, each one of us has some wealth. But if somebody has the entire wealth of the universe, that is Ishwara. So this is what is Bhagavan. When you talk about Bhagavan, this is what you intend. So in this verse, in line with that tradition, Patanjali tells the special characteristics of Ishwara is his knowledge is uncomparable. He is Sarvajnaha, all knowing. So he tells degree of omniscience is the highest in Ishwara. This word omniscience itself is so funny, right? If you ask somebody to spell, most of the time, everybody will make a mistake. So that's a tricky word. So the seed of omniscience is defined by the commentators Vyasa and Shankaracharya, is the ability to understand anything, whether it is large, macro, or micro, whether it is individual or collective, or whether it is in the past, present, or future. So knowing everything and anything, this is ability to understand in all the time. And this is maximum in Ishwara. And that is why Ishwara is called as a special Purusha. Please don't think that this is really superstitions, right? When you think about the universal intelligence as Ishwara, if you think Ishwara as a person sitting above the cloud, looking at you, this may sound like, yeah, superficial. But if you think about Ishwara as the universal intelligence, this makes complete sense. So this is what it is. So let's listen the verse once again and try to understand it.
Tatra niratishayam sarvajna bijam.
Tatra niratishayam sarvajna bijam. His seed of omniscience is uncomparable, or it is the maximum. So let's move on to the final verse we are going to cover today. So let's listen.
स पूर्वेषाम् अपि गुरुः कालेनानवच्छेदात्
Sa purvesham api guruhu kalena va avaschitat. So the literal meaning is this Ishwara, right? We are continuing the characteristics of Ishwara. This Ishwara api, he is the guru. Guru means the teacher. Purvesham, all the ancient masters. So Patanjali is saying that all the masters before him, whether it is a Krishna or a Christ or anybody, this Ishwara is the original teacher, because he is not limited. Avaschedat, kalena avaschedat. He is not bound by time. See, being unconditioned by time, Ishwara is the first teacher. This is what the next sutra tells. Very interesting, right? So, who is the original teacher of the universe? Patanjali tells, none other than Ishwara. So, in our tradition, Lord Dakshinamurti is considered as the first teacher. It is said that he is the primordial teacher. So, when you in Shaivite tradition, right, Lord Shiva, meaning it's a, who is Lord Shiva? Lord Shiva is a representation of the Ishwara. So this Lord Shiva is represented as the Ishwara in many forms. You can see he is the Lord of the yoga. He is the Lord of the dances. He is the Lord of the several things. And one representation of Lord Shiva is Dakshinamurti. Dakshinamurti means he is the first teacher who gave the knowledge. So you can see this in Dakshinamurti Stotram, a famous book. It paints a beautiful picture. Like you can see a young teacher sitting under a banyan tree, and all the great sages like the Sanakas, all these great sages who are matured sages sitting in front of a young teacher and studying. This is only a symbolic representation. But what Patanjali is trying to say here is that every teacher in the past, every teacher, whether whoever came in our tradition, that teacher got the original knowledge from Ishwara. So Ishwara is the Adi Guru or the primordial teacher, and every teaching lineage has started from that Ishwara. So this is what it is. So let's try to see the meaning. So it is the supreme and real teacher behind all the teachers. So any teacher got his teaching handed down through that lineage, and the lineage starts with Ishwara. Ishwara is the true source of all the human knowledge, because you may say that a scientist discovered, Einstein discovered the law of relativity, but who put that here? Because Einstein only discovered. Who created that knowledge? It is Ishwara. So all the human knowledge or the possibility to invent something new, that all came from Ishwara. Individuals are merely instruments of that supreme guru. He just programmed it. You just went and found it out. All the great spiritual teachers in our lineage are considered as the embodiment of Adi Guru. The reason is every other teacher was bound by space and time, and the Ishwara was there all along. That is why the Ishwara is considered as the Adi Guru. So there is a famous prayer in our tradition. It tells, Sada Shiva Samarambha, Shankaracharya Madhyama, Asmadacharya Paryanta, Vande Guru Paramparam. Those who follows the Advaita Vedanta, not any other tradition. Because if you follow Vishishta Advaita, it's a different prayer. So, and all those prayers are valid. So it tells Sada Shiva Samarambha. The teaching lineage has started with Lord Shiva. And in between, the Shankara came in. And my teacher is my immediate lineage. But teacher who is teaching me is my immediate teacher. But even though my teacher is teaching me, that teaching has a very, very fantastic lineage. And that lineage started from Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva means Ishwara. So every teaching in the whole universe started with Ishwara. So this is what the idea is. Ishwara is the Adi Guru. So let's collect all the thoughts we have said so far and recap, and then we can go to the Q&A. We covered 3 verses. In fact, 4 verses on Ishwara. First, we talked about Ishwara Pranidhana, because Patanjali said, your goal of yoga. What is the goal of yoga? I wanted to gain control over my mental activities. For that, I need to gain samadhi. The first samadhi I'm gaining is Samprajnada Samadhi. Samprajnada itself, I start with Savitarka, Savichara, Sananda, Saasmita. And from there, I go to this Asamprajnada Samadhi. And for that, I need to put the means is Abhyasa, the consistent practice of the Ashtanga Yoga, and Vairagya. It is the ability to avoid binding desires. So this I talked. And then what means for this, in spite of this effort and Vairagya, I can accelerate this process by understanding and aligning with Ishwara. And that is what is Ishwara Pranidhana. And we took a pause and we tried to understand who is Ishwara. Ishwara means, the word come from Ish, to control. The one who has control over everything is Ishwara. And Ishwara do not have a name or a form. Of course, you can see Ishwara in different form, because our tradition is rich enough to help you to visualize Ishwara in, or symbolize Ishwara in any form you want. So if you want like a universal father, you can visualize Ishwara as Lord Shiva. If you want a friend, you can visualize him like a Krishna. If you want like a powerful warrior support person, it is Subramanya. So these forms of Ishwara are many, but there is only one Ishwara. So when you look through the lens of Ishwara, means Vivekananda brilliantly tells, it's like you are looking at a light through a particular shape. So you're looking at that light through the shape of Lord Shiva. The Ishwara appears as Lord Shiva to you. You can look at the same Ishwara through the lens of a mother, and that becomes Devi. So this Ishwara, who is beyond these names, forms, and any other characteristics, he is the universal intelligence. He is the intelligent order of the universe. The presence of Ishwara we can feel in every moment. The Ishwara is very much part and parcel of the universe. And this Ishwara, understanding this Ishwara and surrendering to this Ishwara, Ishwara Pranidhana, is the easy way to accelerate my process to reach Samadhi. And then today we saw that, who is this Ishwara? Ishwara is a special Purusha. I am also a Purusha because I do have Atma. I do have consciousness in me. But there is a difference between the consciousness in me and Ishwara, because I was born into this world because of my karma. I got this body because of this karma. I am bound, okay, my lifespan, my aggregate experience, and my body, the type of life I have, everything is bound by this karma. But Ishwara is free from this karma. It means from that perspective, Ishwara has some difference from an enlightened master also. Let's say that an enlightened master, somebody got enlightened in this life, there is a difference between him and Ishwara, because Ishwara was never bound, but this enlightened master was bound for a period of time, but eventually he got out of it. But that's the difference. So Ishwara is never bound by any of these 4 characteristics of a typical jiva. We talked about that, right? The first one is klesha, second one is karma, third one is vipaka, and the fourth one is ashaya. Klesha means it is that the struggles or potential problems which takes me away from my path of spirituality. So there are 5 kleshas. We talked about that. One is avidya, understanding who am I, what is my true identity, which may leads to a false ego, which is called asmita. And when I am falsely identifying with my body, I will have binding likes and binding dislikes, raga and dvesha. And then that may create something called apinivesha, which is a strong desire to live, and an extremely fear for death. So this is where this avidyas, the kleshas, comes from. And this kleshas leads to karma, because whatever actions I do with a binding desires, it put an impression into my storehouse, that is karma, and eventually some results will come because of that karma, which is vipaka. And finally, all these karmas are accumulated in a pool of karma. We call in Vedanta Sanchita karma, and that is known here in the Sankhyan yoga knowledge as karma shaya. Just like a jalashaya stores jala, the karma shaya stores the karma. And every human being is bound by these fourfold problems. And Patanjali tells Ishwara is a special Purusha who is not bound by any of these four characteristics. In the next sutra, he tells us that Ishwara is a special being. How? Because his knowledge he is sarvajnaha. His knowledge is not comparable to anything. He is all-knowing. So there we stood and understood a little bit more about Ishwara through the definition of Bhagavan. And finally, Patanjali made one more assertion brilliantly. He tells every gurus in the world, every teachings in the world, Ishwara is the primary source. So understanding of this Ishwara is very much essential. So these are the three verses we saw. Means probably we can listen to the chanting once again, and then we can go to the Q&A. So let me come back. I think I have these are the three verses. Let's listen.
क्लेशकर्म विपाकाशयैरपरामृष्टः पुरुषविशेष ईश्वरः तत्र निरतिशयं सर्वज्ञबीजम् स पूर्वेषाम् अपि गुरुः कालेनानवच्छेदात्.
Okay, so that completes the three verses. Let's listen to the final prayer and go to the Q&A. So we will listen to the final prayer.
पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते. शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः.